What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Psychology of Spirituality. Today we'll be talking about social psychology, which is probably the most mainstream form of psychology. I'll be having a conversation with Sana and David, who are two PhD students in social psychology. They'll be discussing their research, how they came to this field. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit subscribe, support the channel. I've had some really interesting conversations with some spiritual leaders recently, just editing that stuff that'll be coming out really soon. Before we begin with those conversations, I wanted to just do a quick introduction into what social psychology is. So let's get right into that. We were only doing what we were told. This was a sentiment echoed by many Nazi war criminals during the infamous Nuremberg trials. Stanley Millgram, a social psychologist, sought to understand why seemingly normal people would follow authority so blindly. In his famous Millgram experiments, he had participants shock other people at the behest of a person wearing a lab coat, instructing them to do so. Despite the participants knowing that the person had a heart condition and even feeling the sample electric shock themselves, more than 50% in each trial still went to the full voltage. In this sense, the field of social psychology has to deal with our attitudes, our thoughts, our perceptions in context with the social world. Milgram's experiment sought to understand the blindness in which we follow authority at times. In the most interesting turn of results, participants who refused to administer shocks had a carryover effect, where other participants also followed, with the rate dropping under 25%. It's interesting to self-assess whether we would be one of the people who would continue administering shocks, or whether we would stand up for justice. Would we simply say we were only doing what we were told? First and foremost, let's just get some introductions as to who you guys are.
All right, so I'm Sana. I'm a fourth-year graduate student at the University of Houston. Planning on getting my PhD in social psychology.
My name's David. I'm a second-year graduate student of social psychology here at UH, and I'm also getting my PhD.
Social psychology is probably the most famous form of psychology. People usually, BuzzFeed articles, it usually comes up the most when people think of psychology. What is social psychology to you?
So I guess at the most basic level, social psychology is just the study of human behavior.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's just really seeing how people interact and understanding the mechanisms that kind of define how we interact with each other, whether or not it's people or institutions.
Yeah, so like how and why we interact the way that we do.
What aspects of social psychology were you drawn towards when you made this choice in becoming graduate students?
So my research specifically focuses on alcohol consumption within the romantic relationship. So it's almost like a little bit more of like a positive take on drinking. So it's like the idea that couples that drink together stay together. So I look at what usually influences couples to drink together and how they act after they drink together or separate.
For me, I'm really interested in sexual minority couples that drink and how stress actually impacts the relationship. And so I think it's really cool to see how relationships can serve as a buffer to stress and can help us not drink as much, but also the effects of stress on alcohol consumption behaviors.
I think this is a good segue into applying your research into some relevant takeaways where people can, control their alcoholic behaviors or whatever you guys have found from your guys' research.
So kind of leading into that, so for my dissertation, I plan on looking at different like conflict and support strategies that couples have, particularly after trauma. So here in Houston, we had Hurricane Harvey. So a lot of couples experienced Harvey together, and it was a very traumatic experience. So looking at how they support each other, how they resolve conflicts might influence, or it's probably going to be influencing their alcohol use and their mental health. So by looking at those different factors, we can change the way that we cater couples therapy and how we can better inform people on how to deal with their relationships in a more healthy way, because our relationships can spill over into many different aspects of our life. So it can influence how we are at work, influences how we are at home. So I think it's pretty important to know in our everyday lives how to like properly deal with conflicts and to support each other in a healthy way.
I would say understanding stress. So stress can be beneficial sometimes, but not when you are applying stress for someone's identity. So I think that's probably one of the best things to understand, is that everyone has stress because of who they are. And so to be more understanding of what results from that stress. So if we see someone has a substance use problem, it doesn't make them a bad person. It could simply be, well, there are mechanisms that cause people to get there. And so I think it allows us to develop more understanding of people's behaviors.
What are some signs where people can look in their beloveds or significant others if there are signs of potential alcohol dependency or abuse?
I would say looking at the reasons behind why people are drinking. So again, the literature shows that if you're drinking to have a good time, you're not really as likely to develop substance use problems. If your alcoholism has been linked to drinking to reduce tension specifically. So if someone is extremely stressed and they turn to alcohol as a way to relieve that stress, that's a pretty high indicator of alcohol abuse from what the literature has shown in the past.
Also trying to quit, but unsuccessfully not being able to quit. So if you're and if the desire is there, then if you're consistently trying to quit and they're unable to, whether or not it's because of stress, such as tension reduction, or because of innate desires, then regardless, that's what I think is one of the best things to look for.
Okay. What brought you to this field of social psychology?
For me, it's just kind of been circumstance. I've never really had a specific game plan with my life. I've just kind of floated through school. I did psychology as my major in undergrad, and then didn't really know what to do with that after I got my bachelor's. So I worked in a research position for a little while, and then realized that if I wanted to get a job within psychology, I should at least get a master's. So I started my master's degree, and then my advisor, 1 year into the program, got a different position at a different university, so here at the University of Houston, and she asked me to come with her, and I agreed, and now I'm in a PhD program, and I'm really loving it, so it's my journey.
I knew I always wanted to do grad school since doing my undergrad in psychology. For me, getting to working in relationships and substance use and minority stress, I've just always found it very fascinating what causes people to get to the point of like dependency, to the point of substance abuse. So I just found it really fascinating. And then also relationships are just super cool. I think it's something that we don't realize has such an impact on our behavior. Not even just romantic relationships, but friendships or anything's really a relationship. So then just seeing how partners can improve our lives so much. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for doing this interview with me.